Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Nëïgsëndöïg Cöcülës show. My name is Nëïgsëndöïg, the namesake for this here podcast. Now, for those of you that have not watched the first two parts of this series, go ahead and listen to them. Actually, you can't really watch anything because I only do an audio podcast. Doesn't matter. I have finished the book Laws of Life, Ditch the System, Design Your Life by Jack Spirko, who is a prepper. He is a podcaster and has done many different jobs in the past. He's the proprietor of the Survival Podcast, which started all the way back on June 20th, 2008, basically right around the time of the housing bubble crash. The whole goal of this book is to basically show that you were fed a subtle, slow drip poison of bad advice, empty ambition, and a trap of systems designed for you to be mediocre. If you try to go above and beyond mediocrity, you are punished. In fact, it is better if you are dirt poor so you can rely on these systems and be mediocre for your entire life. These are 16 principles that Jack attempts to codify in his own life, and every single one of them works for him. Now, he's also said that not all the laws may work for someone, but they should be attempted regardless. And then you should evaluate them to see if there was success gathered from any of these laws. On top of that, every single law in this book has some sort of connection to another law. I have given the example of laws 8, 9, and 15. This may... It's not a may. This will require multiple read-throughs because people will not understand the system. Even I don't fully understand this system yet. But I think it's all out of the way now. Let's just go ahead and start with Law 9 in Part 3. Law 9. Don't make excuses. You can make excuses or money, but you can't make both. While there are legitimate reasons, like something stupid happening, for people being unable to make good on a promise they made, people who just don't want to do something right up to the last minute, they're going to make excuses left, right, and center. These are lies. Now, the person who points something out like this, saying that there are legitimate reasons, they tend to have a mental illness I'll call excuse-itis, which is a chronic excuse-making mental illness that has symptoms of gaslighting, deceit, and manipulation. Now, I will give you the differences between excuse-itis and legitimate reasons. Legitimate reasons are things that happened to cause a chain reaction of events that are almost always outside of one's control. Excuses are basically horrible reasons and or lies that are 100% in one's control. These tend to result in the gaslighting, deceit, and manipulation I spoke of. Now, I have done the latter. I have had excuse-itis and still do for some cases. I have done this in the past. I was a manipulative, slimy, and overall jerky punk back in the day. No, seriously, I was. Now, Jack had said some things in this chapter, and he does take them from other sources. We have some examples here, one of them as follows. To be blunt, quoting my father here, excuses are like buttholes. Everyone has one and they all stink. The other reason I focus on money is that it is one of the most important things in your life. If nobody noticed this, this is directly connected to Law 2, what he said there, as that has to do with frugal living. You can listen to basically my thoughts on Law 2 in Part 1. Now, Ben Affleck's character in Boiler Room says the following. Anyone that says money is the root of all evil doesn't flippin' have any. They say money can't buy happiness. Look at the flippin' smile on my face, ear to ear, baby. For this in particular, there is some wisdom that you can gather from this if you just think about it for a second, why this was in the script of Boiler Room. Now, One particular correlation you can make, and causation too, is that however much money, I think it will be fiat or otherwise, that you have, that will determine where you live. Now, if you don't have any fiat, but you're still happy regardless, it's likely you are using a hard asset like Bitcoin, gold, silver, copper, or maybe you have some real estate that you're leveraging. Though the real estate bubble is currently crashing right now due to what is called by Mark Moss a inflationary crash or a reverse market crash. I don't know what the flip that's all about. I'd have to do some research into it. But that said, the false dichotomy of money being important or not is a major excuse for someone wanting to live like they're broke. This is a sign of excusitis. Now, Jack goes on to mention that money should be nothing more than a form of energy. And understanding the basic level of, in theory, labor equaling money, money is a battery for you. As long as you respect how it works and develop systems to acquire money, which, by the way, is not scarce, with exceptions, you're set to prepare yourself for whatever's coming. That's why you spend or actually purchase things that are going to last you a long time, because you prepare for whatever is coming. Many people, as of right now, this very moment, are experiencing discomfort as a result of beliefs, counter to the behavior and or new information that is presented to somebody. I had this happen for many years, 22 in fact. I explained this in bonus episode 3. This is called cognitive dissonance. And what I just described is Jack's definition of cognitive dissonance. This happens all the time to people who, for example, are on one side or the other side of a particular political aisle. This is why I personally don't subscribe to any political dichotomy anymore, because they're false. Again, I reference bonus episode 3 here, as I used to be an absolute punk and moron. Yes, I was an idiot. Before finding out I may have a 120 IQ or above, I might be an autistic savant. I digress though. There is a line of programming so insidious, this induces the rise of excusitis. And it's this line of programming as follows. It's not your fault. It is some other person or group's fault, and someone should fix it for you. That is in connection to Law 5, in which that other person or group tends to be the state. I made this incorrect assumption about the state being the people being ruled. It's the state being people who are on an absolute power trip. Jack talks about this all the time in his podcast, which I am a regular listener. And I even mentioned episode 3688 of the Survival Podcast. Not 3668. I had the episode wrong. That was a different episode. My bad. Anyway, let's move on. Now, when one acts in response to an excuse, you basically didn't make it an excuse. You made that a reason. Now, there are ways to make sure excuses are not made. This is when it comes to starting a business, in which I've been attempting to do for 4 or 5 years now, actually more than 4 years. At age 23, in which I am supposed to be broke at ages 23, 24, and 25 until I figure out what I want to do with my life. Oh, and by the way, Jack, I cannot do a trade professionally even if I learn said trade. I would be happy to do it for fun, but otherwise, no can do. You might want to listen to bonus episode 2 if you want to know exactly why I personally have the inability to do a trade, and content creation is my goal, my calling. Anyway, your business, I guess, strategies, if you will, are to bootstrap by starting smaller than desired, which, let's be real, I did that. No capital yet, because it's going to be on YouTube and maybe other platforms If y'all have recommendations for other platforms that are open source and free software, I would be absolutely happy to take a look into that. I know of Odyssey, I know of PeerTube. I will not use Rumble because that has some very shady ties. And BitChute might also have very shady ties. No can do on those two. I was considering Twitch as well since that's more gamer oriented, but I might end up going with Kick. Oh wait, I think Sokio already has Kick. Never mind. Moving on to the next one. You take a second job or a side hustle and saving money to start a business. Now, I did have a summer job about a few years ago. This was before COVID. So this is something to keep in mind here. I had a summer job at, what was it, it had to have been age 16 or 17. I think it was age 16 when I had a summer job before I turned 17. But that's neither here nor there. You build a presentation for an idea you have, and then just run a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe campaign to start your business up. Another one is taking a job in a field or industry for a business idea, and you learn that industry better, making contacts and seeing where you are led. This is what I want to do for content creation. I would be absolutely happy to join a content creation group that specializes in Linux and those with autism. I have both. I have a special interest in free software and local first setups, but I also have autism spectrum disorder level 1. That's pretty obvious. Or the fifth idea is to start a business that requires less startup capital than desired. I started Cöcülës Nation in 2021 with no capital at all. I just had my current PC, which I've used for 5 years, and pretty much just wanting to do YouTube because I wanted to do this for years. I started up YouTube, at least YouTubing, back in 2018. I think like 2017, 2018. Those videos are not on the platform anymore, though they may be stored somewhere. I'm not entirely sure about that. Doesn't matter. And to end this law off, there is mental programming that we have here, and it's this, as follows. Computer, excuses are expensive. Identify them and destroy them with prejudice. Yeah, excuses will cost you a lot of money and relationships. If you were having a business partnership and something didn't happen and you made excuses for it, other than basically owning up to it, like in Law 8, apologizing like an adult that you messed something up, you fluffed it up, you mucked it up. If you don't admit your goof up and shift your blame to something else, which is why I've mentioned bonus episode 3 in was it part 2? It was part 2. Doesn't matter. If you make excuses, you are literally destroying yourself financially. This is bad news. Get out of your excusitis. Take some vitamin B1. Learn how to not make excuses and actually do stuff. Don't just be a mouthpiece for some sort of hate group. No, actually do stuff that is productive to you and that will be productive to others. That's literally how this works here. If you don't want to do that, tough love. Go do something else and go be an idiot elsewhere. We're not going to have any functional, stupid idiots here. That's how it's going to work. Okay, let's calm down and go to Law 10. Law 10. No one cares like you. When it comes to what you want and those you love, no one will ever care as much or work as hard as you. That one is self-explanatory, though this one will require lots of relearning when, not if, when it's forgotten. I put if it's forgotten here because that basically comes from Jack's words on the matter. This is a connection likely to laws 1, 5, and 6. Now, law 1, I cover that in part 1. Part 2 had laws 5 and 6. Now, Jack has an example that will probably be one of the most just incriminating examples of nobody caring other than you do. It's this, as follows. When these opportunities popped up, what I should have done was challenge these people to start said business 100% on their own, to then build it up to some small success alone. Simply saying something like, come back to me in a year with a functional business and modest customer base, and then I will help you grow. I know exactly what would have happened if I had done so. Absolutely nothing. Now, Jack made this mistake multiple times in his life, but he's always rebounded and relearned that nobody will really care about anything other than you do. Now, society believes and programs people that work ethic is unfair, but you just get that done and dusted and flippin' fast. Work ethic is actually for those who prep anyway, which is likely not my mindset. My work ethic is mixed at times. On one hand, I have the work ethic of someone who is actually normal and who lived, say, in the 16th century when homesteading was the norm, and then the modern day where I was basically mediocre. So I have a mix of both, but I am slowly working on my work ethic. Hopefully, if I do this right. Now, the one that does more, works harder, and digs deeper and learning more in any industry will actually be better off in the end than by those who just do the bare flippin' minimum. Just do the bare minimum. That's what society wants. Not yours truly, because I happen to be independent, so I have to learn even more about this industry. Ugh, it's gonna stink. It'll stink up to high heaven like all those dead rats, and just mixed with the mousetraps with rotten, moldy cheese, smelling like all kinds of raw milk that has gone spoiled and already, looking green and sloppy like Slimer from flippin' Ghostbusters. Anyway, let's move on. Let's flip and move on, because, Anyway, social engineers love when people do the bare minimum. Average. They want average. Just idiotic enough to not notice what is happening, but just smart enough to understand the machines that they are operating somewhat. They don't want people who can think for themselves, because if social engineers see people thinking for themselves, they're going to try to engineer them to just not do that. Don't believe the lie that you should just do the bare minimum. No, you need to be doing your best effort. You need to be giving your 100%. And I've tried to do that, but for some reason I cannot do it. Maybe it's what I explained in one of the podcast 2.0 sections. Doesn't matter though. I don't want to be mediocre, as mediocrity is just another way I become a punk, like I literally talked about in bonus episode 3. Anyway, leadership and authority. This is, I believe, connected to law 7. Leadership and authority are earned and given to those by those who will follow the leader, one who leads themselves like a team, and then they'll follow them if they know, hey, wait a minute, this person seems to be doing a lot better than I can. Maybe I should learn from them. That's how this works. It is recommended that you take a job for what you can't be taught, not how much money you will make. And I did talk about this earlier, but at 23, 24, and 25 years of age, you have to be broke. No, seriously, you are broke at 23, 24, and 25. I am 23 years old. I am in my mid-20s. You're supposed to be broke. I'm supposed to be broke. That is until 26, where you should have already figured out how to fix that. Anyway, a phrase that Jack mangles here too is like this, as follows. An education that is relevant to your life goals is priceless. The reason why it's not an education is priceless is because I think I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes. You can run the numbers in LibreOffice Calc or any Excel type equivalent and calculate the price on an education that is irrelevant to your life. Moving up will mean moving over and moving often. If you can't learn more from a job, that's when you leave a job for another one, likely the same industry of one that is to be found in a CV or a resume of some sort, essentially. You move down only when the value of the knowledge will exceed the pay cut in the long term. The pay cut will only be short term, but you can just get that stuff back. Now, everything one can control, well, if you control everything, this is your responsibility for what you control. Even if something happens that isn't your fault, you are somehow responsible for it. Deal with it and just get it done. Even if it's not your fault, deal with it. People think if something isn't their fault, they should just wait until it gets fixed. No, if you're responsible for something that wasn't done by you, you're still going to do it regardless. You're still doing it. Whether you like it or not, it's getting done by you. Oh boy, that is going to be one heck of a thing to deal with. Anyway, we have a lot, and I do mean a lot, to just basically deprogram people. Oh wait, I've been trying to do that by using Jack's book, my own interpretation of Jack's book. Hopefully I seem to be doing okay, but maybe not. Now, to end this law, if you don't love yourself, if you don't care about yourself, well, people are going to care about you, but you're not going to care as much for people as you do for yourself. If you love yourself, then you will end up prospering. It only happens if you care as much about what you're doing. You're the one who has to care for yourself, ironically. Not! Anyway, let's move on before I keep losing my marbles. Law 11. Remove the walls. There's a reason you can't walk through walls in your dreams. They are your walls, and you put them there. Now, most obstacles here in our lifetime are just obstacles we decided to put in front of us. It's literally in our head. Sometimes they are necessary, but most of the time, heck no. Now, there is a quote from The Matrix that is mentioned, and here it is. Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only realize the truth. There is no spoon. Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself. Now, with this quote, people will try to bend the spoon, and all they're doing is bending themselves in such distorted way, they'll literally fall for anything. They look like a mangled mess, like a Mario Kart track that goes all kinds of different directions. Or should I use Revolt, the 1999 racing classic? Maybe Palmont in Need for Speed Carbon? Doesn't matter. Think of a racing game that has all kinds of paths and whatnot. That's what you have if you try to bend the spoon, but rather bend yourself while trying to bend the spoon, because there is no spoon. It's really that simple when you think about it for a second and think critically on it. Now, most of the walls and the metaphorical spoon are both metaphysical and spiritual in that regard. Now, that said, this particular law is connected to Law 9. Law 11 gives you the tools to crack down on your excusitis. There are a few ways that Jack put it. The conventional way is installing a door. This is something that is practical. For something that requires installing a door, like getting a degree from a college that is relevant to your life, that is one way you can install a door and do this manually. It will take the longest time, but it will probably be the most conventional. You can tunnel under or climb over the wall. Now, this is a creative way of getting something done, though it is going to be considered very, very cheaty by society. I'm going to tick people off here. Do I care? Heck no. I use AI as a tool and a reference point for something creative if done right. Now, if you remember way back in the channel, way back in the channel, I used a couple of profile pictures. And if I remember to put them in the video version of the podcast, these are the 2 profile pictures, maybe 3, that I have used. Those are the ones I've used as PFPs. Nowadays, I have a Clippy. You can thank Louis Rassman for that. But anyway, if you get good at something, it will qualify as climbing the wall. Something faster and more efficient than following the rules is basically just tunneling or climbing over the wall, whichever you want to do with that. The third way is fast and direct, but you need commitment and talent. This is blowing a hole through a wall. All of this is metaphysical shenanigans. This is another way of being creative in basically dealing with a wall you put there, which society considers to be cheaty. Again, this is fast and direct. That's what I did. I blew a hole through a wall. Now, I may have multiple walls, and I'm doing some things to either tunnel, climb, or just blow a hole through it. In some cases, you realize, wait a minute, this isn't a wall, and you just Thanos snap that sucker out of existence. Things that need to be done or stopped in order to go forward with your life. This is the red pill as shown in The Matrix. Yes, I've watched the original Matrix. I haven't watched the second movie or probably the modern Matrix movies, which they just recycle stuff anyway. Hollywood loves to recycle stuff for a modern audience. It's bullspit! It's slop! Anyway, sometimes there are reasons for walls, but in other times, just like as I explained in Law 9, these are excuses and lies. Absolute lies. Now, when you dream, this is just a method of working things out in your mind when you're asleep. Now, this will be done in symbolism, but not necessarily what bonus episode 3 talks about. Now, there's a permaculture designer. If you have heard of permaculture, you'll have heard of this gentleman, Jeff Lawton. Jack has a quote from Lawton, and he's once said this: "The more restrictions placed upon a design, the more eloquent the design is, if the designer is good at his trade." I think this can apply to only using as much free software as possible. Is that not true nowadays? For me, I use a mix of proprietary software and free software, as in freedom, not usually free beer, but sometimes that happens. I'm talking about free and open source software that follows a specific philosophy created by Richard Stallman, the free software movement, of which I'm a huge proponent of. Anyway, what Jeff said are good types of walls, if you think about that for a second. If you put a lot of restrictions on what is done, then and only then will you be the most creative as possible. Anyway, let's go to the final law for this episode, which is this one. Law 12. Know what you believe. Believe as you wish, but know exactly why you believe what you believe. I hate this law with a passion! Is what I would say if I were still a punk like I was in the first 22 years of my life. I mean, with autism, I can't really articulate what I believe, but dadgummit, can I understand more than I can articulate? You'll just have to see what I do in order to seriously understand. And this is a legit reason why I am unable to articulate my reasoning well, despite being well spoken at times. I am brash, I am pretty forward with it, but I will use a lot of jargon. Lots of jargon! Some people say it's a form of doublespeak, but it might be a good form of doublespeak if you know how to explain it. That's the key thing here. Now, cognitive dissonance comes back with a vengeance. It has cousins. Confirmation bias, meaning we seek to confirm what we've believed, no matter how nutty we are with it. And perception bias. Basically, what you see and then deny reality right in front of you. That's the most oversimplified version that I could come up with. And fun fact, it's not really defined in this chapter. I'm not entirely sure about how that works, but it doesn't matter. You're going to be ticked at me for this, but Jack talks about the idiom, the frog slowly boiling in the water. This is bullspit! It's a bandwagon that is phony. It's a phony bandwagon. It's used by doomers who believe this is happening, and they're full of garbage. They do exactly what I talk about in bonus episode 3. Ugh. Goodness gracious, is it nasty. Oh, and by the way, the Mythbusters have done an experiment on boiling frogs. They just have some sort of temperature gradient, basically. That myth was busted, by the way, because the frog doesn't boil when it's being boiled. That just doesn't happen. Anyway. Alright, I'm back. I calmed my booba. Anyway, our current system of education will teach this fake garbage to children. Is this not indoctrination? Well, George Carlin said this once. And yes, that George Carlin, the late comedian George Carlin. What a fucking legend. Governments don't want a population capable of thinking. They want obedient workers. People just smart enough to run the machines and just dumb enough to passively accept their situation. This is not what's taught today in our schools, is it? I think it is. Anyway, there is mental programming here, and it's this, as follows. Computer, find me something more interesting and or more relevant to my life to investigate or learn. Is it not that hard to do? Because I've been doing this for a couple of years. I have done this for 4 years, and this will affect me big time. Now, here's how you can determine if something is true for you. And this has to do with, in particular, knowing what you believe. Number 1, is it something I give the square root of flip all about? Number 2, since I care about it, if it is, are there any red flags? Subcategory 1, is it something I can confirm or disprove easily? And subcategory 2, can I confirm any conclusions with at least 2 independent sources? That's the hard part, independent sources. Most of media today is not independent. And I can explain some of this in probably a future bonus episode about how the media is completely deceptive nowadays. Independent media like myself, like Spirko, and many, many others who go the independent media route, this is what we do. I try to use a lot of independent sources, but sometimes I have to use the mainstream ones and then try to find the independent sources if possible. That's hard to do. Anyway, number 3, main category 3 here. Since there doesn't seem to be any sensationalism shoved down my throat, what does my research tell me about what I'm looking at? Subcategory 1. Am I looking for something concrete? Subcategory 2. Am I looking for opinions that are informed on something supposedly unknowable? Subcategory 3. Am I seeking an answer That is, as of yet to be determined and remains an opinion temporarily. And then main category 4, once you go through all that, do I know about this issue well enough to explain it to someone interested? That fourth part, I am unable to do. The first 3 parts, dadgummit, I can get those down really easily. Just the fourth part, I am a complete idiot on because I am not well spoken. My speech is condemnable. I'd rather write scripts. And for Twirling Otter in particular, this is why I write scripts. Though I try to do this hybrid format, I might just go back to writing everything down as I did, but it was a good experiment regardless. But that said, I think part 3 is finished. And laws 13 through 16 will be in the final part of this miniseries. But that said, every episode releases Wednesday afternoons, without scheduling conflicts, if any, at 4 p.m. Pacific Time. You can listen to this podcast on Wavelake, YouTube, and any other Podcast 2.0 player, such as Podverse, Fountain, AntennaPod, and many, many, many more. You can also copy the RSS feed, located in the show notes YouTube side, and paste it to a player that doesn't support Podcast 2.0. I listen on AntennaPod on my Google Pixel 8 Pro, and with a quick search, it works great for my needs. But I am out of time for today's episode. Thank you, and good night.